Hey, welcome to the Hinkle Shop, and if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. So recently I posted a short on this little guy right here, my homemade flattening sled, and there was some pretty good interest in people wanting to know how I built this thing. So in this video I'm going to go over how I built it, the materials I used, and where you can get those materials. And believe me, you're going to want to stick with me because this ain't a $300 sled. It's a whole lot cheaper than that. Let me adjust the camera and get closer so I can show you how we do it. So first things first, you're going to need some 1/4-inch plexiglass. You can get this from the Jungle Store, and I'm going to put links down below for everything I got from Amazon, and then I'll put links in there or descriptions of where you can get this other stuff and what it is. So 1/4-inch plexiglass, that's what you need first. Pardon me. And you're going to make one of these plates. Now there's 100 videos all over YouTube about how you do these plates, but essentially you'll remove the original plate that comes with the trim router, and you'll use that plate as a template to drill your 4 holes. Put this back on to the router base itself, put a 1/4-inch end mill in the router, turn the router on and plunge it through to create your first hole. Then we went up to a 1/2 inch or a 3/4-inch mill, and then I simply took this roundover, which once you've done this one, your bearing will fit through, and then you can just plunge this through and it gives you a perfectly centered hole. So after you have that, the next thing you're going to need is these rails here, and those are called Unistrut, and they use them in the construction and the electrical industry to hang piping, wires, all kinds of things. Those come from the Big Orange store or the Big Blue store. Readily available. You're going to want the taller version. They have 2 versions. One of them is about 1 inch tall. These are about 1.5 inches tall. You want the taller version to create the rigidity you need to run the sled across. So now you have the rails, you have the base made for the router. Now you're going to need some angle iron. I happen to have this laying around, so I used it. This is 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch by 1/8 inch thick angle iron. Very easy to acquire. The Big Blue store and the Big Orange store, I believe they both have that. You can get that there. Then you're going to need 4 bearings. You can get those from the Jungle Store. Again, I'll leave links below to these bearings. And as you can see, we have them right here. You're going to need 4 1.25 by 5/16, 5/16 by 1.25 bolts. On the end of that, you'll put the bearing. On the end of that, you'll put a jam nut or castle nut on the top of that. There's some detail about these bolts, the way they're put in here, that I'll go over when we go to the build. That is about all of the materials that you're going to need. So you're going to need a piece of plastic, 2 rails, some angle iron, bolts, and 4 bearings. Okay, let's get into how I put this thing together. The first step after you have your base made is remove the router so it's easy to use. Then we're going to take our pieces of angle iron, and obviously we'll have the flat bench without these guys in the way. We'll set the angle iron on the bench. Your angle iron is 3 foot long. The 2 long sections are 3 foot long. These 2 short pieces will be determined by the width of this piece of plastic. So I laid the 2 on the table, put that down, brought these 2 together until I had just enough room so that it'll move a little bit without pinching inside the rails. Took a measurement, what the distance was, the width, and cut 2 short pieces to match that width dimension. Once I have those 2 pieces cut, we took this out of the way, and then we made sure that these things were equally separated. Actually, before you remove that, we want to make sure we remember what that measurement was. Take this out, spread that out to that measurement, and then use some ordinary wood clamps or some metalworking clamps and clamp that in position on each corner. All 4. Then, once you have this clamped in place, adjust for square. Take a hammer and tappy tap tap until you get this thing completely square and parallel. Then put some serious pressure on the clamps, hold it down. Take it out to your metalworking department and put some tack welds on the bottom side. Once everything is tacked in place and it won't move, then you can run the welder and you can put some permanent welds on there. And not too shabby on those welds at the Hinkle shop. Let's see what the other side looks like. not too shabby. I did pretty good. This thing will sit either way. It's universal. It doesn't matter. You set that on there. All right, so now you have the sled made. These guys are simple. They come in 10-foot pieces. Cut them in half so you have 5-foot rails. Now, these bolts get drilled. Once this is all welded together, we stand this up vertically. See if I can do this so you can see in the camera. And then we create 2 holes for the bearings that place these bolts right against the base of this frame. As I said earlier, there's something special about this. Let me grab a wrench and we will move. I'll remove one of these because I need to show you what is important here. Again, these are jam nuts. They have a little piece of Teflon in the top. Bearing slides off, no need for washers. But here's what's important about the head of the bolt. Because the distance from this hole is so very close to the base, you'll have to use a 4-inch angle grinder, a file, maybe your sanding disc. I used an angle grinder, and you're going to flatten one side. So that way, when you put the bolt in, it'll sit, oops, I don't have a bearing on there. It'll sit flat and align with that hole. Then you can simply push it through, slide your bearing on, put your lock nut on. If I can do that. There we go. And because that is resting flat against the base, you'll only need 1 wrench. It doesn't need a backer wrench to tighten this up. It locks itself in place. Don't get crazy squeezing these nuts down. Just snug. We don't need any gorillas in the Hinkle shop or anywhere else. Alright, so now you have the 2 bearings in place. You have your carriage to carry the router with. This sits in here and it'll simply slide back and forth. This will roll easily back and forth. Now, once these are cut, to position them, obviously you've got your bearings in, so you hold this down on this end to get your distance of separation. Then you'll take a measurement from this corner to that corner on your Unistrut. That's what this is, Unistrut. You'll transfer that measurement down to the other side. If you have a wooden bench like I do, you can screw these things down, or in this case, I've used a clamp to clamp this end down where I want it to be. These clamps are because this thing rolls so easy when you're pushing it, it'll go off of the rail and land on your foot on the floor. You don't want it to land on your foot, you want it to stop. So these are simple stoppers that I put in place, and there's one on every corner. So if I go like that, it won't go off the table. As you can see, it rolls very easily. Now I have this saw sitting up here on the table because I have another idea that I'm going to do. I'm going to use these 2 rails to generate another carriage that fits this saw, and bing bang boom, you instantly have a panel saw where you could slide plywood sheeting underneath. The saw will not move when I make that carriage. It'll be locked in place in one spot. I'll make a 90-degree side rail fence so that when I line these up, they'll be 90 degrees to the fence. I'll have the saw in here. I'll be able to slide the sheet good underneath and take the saw and slice it right off to size it up so I can throw things on my Onefinity over there. Kind of a cheesy plug for Onefinity, but we'll have it. So that is how we build this thing. It's so simple, it's stupid, to be honest with you. But I'm not going to spend $300-400 on a sled to flatten material just every couple of weeks or every couple of months. The purpose behind this was to flatten stock so I could put it on the machine over there. Flatten it enough so that it didn't do this. And then I can resurface with the CNC if I have to. Alright, once you have this contraption all put together, put your router back in, lock it in place, obviously adjust for height for when you're using your surfacing bit, and slide it along and slide it back and forth as you progress. That's all there is to it. So don't go out and spend $300-400 on all this stuff. If I had to buy every piece, it would cost me $100 to make this thing. So do yourself a favor, make yourself your own sled, And if you wanted to add another piece of angle iron, you can make yourself a panel saw. A whole lot cheaper than you can buy them from the manufacturers, and you'll have fun doing it. So I hope you got something out of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, give us a like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll catch you on the next one.